Yesterday was a good day to do that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, it won't cause the rain, it's a good sign in the
I didn't
almanac.
know, I didn't start even seeing that the streets.
Yeah, it's a good day in almanac to do that. So I moved 2 silver lace ferns and a hosta the other day.
Good morning. Yeah. I thought that too. I didn't know.
I keep up with that in the almanac because I've killed too many plants.
You learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, don't even fool with them in the house unless it's good days like that, so. Okay, shrinkage today. It's gonna be,
Well, I guess
it's all good. It's all good. Uh-oh, having problems with the air conditioning.
doesn't sound like it ain't working.
There it is, Bob.
How are you?
The two girls.
I'm still in the process of trying to clean out flower beds and get rid of plants that are overcrowded.
Did it come on?
It did.
Yeah, I feel so. We need it.
Yeah, they come back to Yes, ma'am.
Nothing else I'll see. Good, Thursday, Friday, so I do coffee.
Okay, thank you.
I quit.
I don't know what we got.
Even house plants.
So good, yes.
Yeah, I'll take Friday. Oh, say someone just stay for Danielle when I saw her. It's got out of the hospital. It's got out of the hospital. We had to have surgery. Yeah, Debbie called Lynn last night. Last night she fell most of her head. Well, she's at work.
We'll be thinking about all of these guys.
Work goes.
That's good.
I think it's been.
Oh, has it been running?
They really missed it, didn't they?
I got another present this morning, Jason.
That's awesome, Linda.
I got $30 from my birthday.
That's great, Linda Mae.
Put lotion or put some salve on the cat and it didn't like it.
Morning.
Well, good morning, y'all.
I hadn't even noticed that.
That's the reason I wore this.
Sorry we're
Oh, them things go.
running behind, but
I keep them.
thankful for the opportunity to be here and get together this morning. I do apologize that we're starting so late. I know I've got y'all accustomed to a little bit of a later start, but not usually this late, and so I do apologize this morning. But anyway, this morning, as we get into our lesson, we're following right along with Risk Takers, the adventures of walking by faith. And if you remember last week, I said that I didn't like the word risk takers, because if you look at the definition of the word risk, that's meaning that, dangerous situations. It means that you don't know the outcome, that you're just kind of going on your own. And I don't think that's what any of these folks that we're going to look at the next 5 or 6 weeks, I don't think that's what they were about. And so this morning, who we're looking at is Joshua. And it says a faith rooted in God's Word. And the point of our lesson is that faith is grounded in obedience to God's Word. And, as a discussion starter, if you look at our question this morning, it says, whom do you admire for stepping into the shoes of another person? And I thought, well, that's a pretty good discussion starter. But I had one even better, I think. You know, and what I want us to really look at as we go through this lesson about Joshua and about a faith rooted in God's Word and this idea of the word faith is, how many of you are a little bit scared of the dark? Is anybody in here a little bit scared of the dark?
Not me.
Not. Some people are.
I go out overnight, I have to.
Some people are. You know, if you're really honest,
I was.
but how many of you are more comfortable if there's somebody with you? Let's go with that question. That should have been how I started. We are more comfortable if there's somebody with us. Why is that?
Because we're not by ourselves.
We're not by ourselves. Okay? See, Felicia says she's never figured it out why she's more comfortable when I'm at home at night than if I have to be away. She can't figure out why, because there's nothing that's going to wake me up. Like, you know, she said it a million times that, you know, somebody could come in, take her, all the kids, you know, everybody kicking and screaming, and I'd just be laying there asleep. I mean, it just wouldn't bother me in the least. But just the fact that I'm there, she's more comfortable. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. If you look at any other type of, let's just say a scary situation, are we not more comfortable in each of those situations if there's someone with us? And I think we would have to, I mean, almost to a person, we would say yes. If we're, whatever the situation is that we're going through. Like with me at work, I'll give you another great example. My paperwork days. Those are like terrible. I'm terrified of paperwork days. And so I make my TS2 stay in there with me. He doesn't really help me a whole lot, but just the fact that he's in there and I can just knowing he's there makes it easier. And I think that's the case with lots and lots of our situations. When it's a scary, worrisome, something that we're concerned about situation, we feel more comfortable when we're not alone. Now, you're saying, okay, how does that tie to this lesson? How does that tie to this question that I read as our discussion started? What makes faith hard?
Because you can't see who's with you.
Would y'all agree with what Carlotta said? How many of us agree with that? That is what makes faith hard. Is that we can't, you know, if I'm going to the hospital and I've got something going on, and April comes with me, I'm more comfortable because I can see April. And April can touch my arm and my shoulder and that presence. When we think about the idea of faith, it makes it hard because we can't see it. So I think everybody nodded when Carlotta said
Well,
that.
that's actually the definition of faith.
Absolutely, Janet. It goes back to the definition of faith. The idea of believing what we can't see. The idea of believing what we haven't experienced. You know, Jesus goes so far as he was preaching and teaching in his ministry on his time on earth. He went so far that says, blessed are you that believed when you saw, but even more blessed are those that believe and never see. Think about that statement that Christ made. He says to his disciples, blessed are you that believe because you see, but even more blessed are those that believe and never see. What does that say about us?
We're in that last
We're
group.
in that last group. Now, I'm going to stay on this path, so y'all follow me. I had it really mapped out in my mind on my way to church this morning, but then we had a meeting and it may have gotten jumbled up a little bit. But, so let's follow this same pathway, right? So, faith is believing when we can't see. I want to share one other thing. As we get older, what happens to our faith? Let me refer that. As we grow more mature as a Christian, what happens to our faith?
Well,
It gets stronger.
It grows.
It gets stronger.
It's strong.
I think everybody in here said exactly what I wanted y'all, what I thought everybody would say. It wasn't just what I was thinking, but I think, why is that?
Circumstances happens and
More evidence.
And it, you know, and you go by experience, you know, eventually it builds your faith over time.
Janet, did y'all hear what Janet says? It's circumstances, and it, as you go through your experiences in life, and it helps to build your faith. April said what?
More evidence.
More evidence. I love that. I love the way that April phrased that. It's more evidence. Do y'all, I think everybody here kind of grasps what they're saying. As we mature as Christians, our faith can grow because of more evidence, because of circumstances in our life. And why is that? I ain't gonna ask any more questions.
We get closer. All those things they said, we get closer to God.
We grow closer, Jeff, and I think Jeff's right, but why do we grow closer?
Sometimes we are in the Word more than what we were in the beginning.
And we trust.
Word, trust, see, Daniel jumped in front of me because I was going to mention, and Stanley just went and nodded, and it touched my heart when he done it. Because I was going to mention, you know, almost every single Sunday when I get done with Sunday school, and I go and say, and Stanley says, you know, but it all boils down to what, Stanley? Trust. He tells me that every single Sunday, and it just touches my heart so much that all I've got to do when I get done teaching is if I just walk this way, I know Stanley is going to remind me of that.
Yeah.
No matter what I'm teaching about, no matter what we've had our lesson about, Stanley's going to say those words right there. It comes down to trust. Now, okay, see, now we're getting to the good part. How is trust built?
Through things that happen in life.
Evidence.
Yeah.
So what April said, things that happen in life. So I'm breaking this down, and I'm going to keep breaking it down. When you first met your spouse, how do you build trust?
Getting to know them better.
Getting to know them better, but then also what?
It takes time.
It takes time, and what happens in that time?
You learn more about them.
You learn more about them.
Do what you say.
You do what you say you're going to do. All of these things wrap up. All these things work together.
Promises fulfilled.
Promises fulfilled. And that's how trust is earned, right, Stanley? That's how trust is earned. So if we tie all this together to this idea of faith, to this idea of as we mature as Christians, our faith does grow. So why does our faith grow as we mature as Christians? How does our trust grow? How does our trust grow as we mature as Christians?
Depend on God.
We depend on God. You know,
Like last night, we just had laid down and went to bed, and we heard something, like somebody threw something against the trailer, and then later on, about 2 or 3 o'clock, there was two people over in Luson's parking lot smoking, walking them over around. We didn't know what, because the little dog was barking, and we didn't know what was going on, so we just got up and looked to see what was going on. I mean, it's getting scary up on the trailer park, because somebody, the next door neighbor's little guy that lives across the yard from us, at Lamarcus, somebody had wrote Satan on the back of his trailer.
oh,
And it's getting scary up there.
it is. And life is scary. But you know, as we trust, then God works more. And as we trust, then things happen. These experiences, these different parts of our life. I want to share one more example. And I know I shared it last week, but I can't help it because it ties in perfectly with this week. You know, I shared last week about me flying, and I was terrified of flying. Until that airplane got off the ground, and I looked down, and I thought, ain't nothing I can do now. And I was fine. And you know what? That airplane got me all the way to Ireland. And it got me all the way home. And so I've got to fly this week to Texas. And you know what? I'm not saying I'm not some concerned, but I'm not near as concerned as I was the first time, because I believe that airplane's going to get me to Texas and get me back home. And then, you know, if I fly again, I think I'll probably be even a little less anxious than this. Boy, I think I'll be less anxious the next time, because I trust that plane is going to get me from A to B. See, that's how it works in fact with our faith in God too.
And if it doesn't get you there, you trust in God to be there for you.
Absolutely. April's going a whole different tangent, but you're right. I believe that was a big part of my first experience. Is I thought, well, ain't nothing I can do. I mean, if it goes down, it goes down. But I know I've shared with y'all before, and I don't think my situation or my experiences are any more unique than anyone else's. But as a child growing up, boy, I had the strongest faith. Because I went to church and I went to Sunday school and I seen it lived out in my family. And, you know, I believed with all my heart, we had a big bubble wrapped around us that, boy, our faith was so strong and we done X, Y, and Z and, you know. And, you know, I had an Uncle Steve that was very special to me. A lot of you have heard the story, a lot of you in Bible school. But, you know, he was so special to me and he was one of the strongest Christian men I'd ever met. And I just, you know, he was the one that everybody he met, he told you, you're awesome. You're incredible. You know, that was his life. And I know I've shared the story, you know, he played football at App and he wrestled at App and he was just, everything he did, it was just as hard as he could go, and that's how he lived life. He was my PE teacher, he was my Sunday school teacher, he was my wrestling coach. I mean, and you know, he was just the most upbeat person I'd ever met. And he, not only was he upbeat, but then he wanted to encourage everybody. The school that I went to where he was my teacher, you know, it wasn't in the best neighborhood. We didn't have the, you know, and he was such an inspiration to a lot of these kids that had no male figure to start with in their lives, but also had no structure, no guidance, nobody there when they came home that said, you're doing great. And so he got sick and he passed away with cancer. And I prayed the whole time, and I just knew that God was going to heal him. I just knew it. How could, you know, that everything's always worked out? You know, since the time I can remember anything, I had the faith that everything always had worked out. Not that they wasn't troubles, not that they wasn't days, but I mean, at the end, it had always. And I thought his disease was a way, or that cancer was a way that God was just going to be, it's a God, you know, look what God did. And he passed away. And it literally rocked my faith world. And it was at his funeral, after my world had been rocked, that hundreds of people came forward to give their life to Christ at his funeral. That my eyes were opened, that it really is trust, right, Stephen? It really is. So my faith went from crashing down to a level way higher because I've seen God really move. But see, that's how faith works. Going back to all these ideas that we've shared, as I live life, I see God working here. I trust him more because he worked in this situation. And when he got me through this situation, guess what? My trust me. How many of us have ever seen the movie Elf? Please say most of you have. Ain't that the fun? Well, that's one of our favorite movies. We can't wait for Christmas so we can pull Elf out of the attic and watch Elf. But you remember at the end of Elf, the thing that makes Santa's sleigh fly? It's the clausometer. And then it's when they start singing, more people believe, and it makes the needle go up and up and up. Have you ever thought about that in relation to our faith? As God moves in our lives, that needle does what? And then as he moves in our lives, that needle does what? And as he moves in our lives, that needle goes. It's the same thing with trust. It's our same thing with faith. As we mature as Christians, that we see God working in this case. He works in that case. He works in that case. And our faith can be increased. And I ain't talked a lick about Joshua yet, have I? And I'm sorry. But I promise you I'm going to get to this when we look at the life of Joshua. Guys, just because our faith increases, this is my last question, I promise. As our faith increases as we mature, does it still mean that our life is any easier?
No.
No.
Does it mean that we're going to automatically, the next thing that comes about, we're going to say, boy, I'm just going to trust God? Is that what that means? No. Y'all already said it, so no, it doesn't. But it does mean that just I'm getting a little bit closer. Every experience of my life, every time God comes through, every time I have to lean on Him, I'm getting a little bit closer. A little bit closer. It doesn't mean there ain't going to come something that's going to rock my world. But it does mean that with each of those cases, I get a little bit closer. That my faith grows a little bit more. And then that helps me get through whatever else that next time. And then, you know what happens as we mature? I told you all. But then we're able to share that with others, right? We're able to share it to our children. We're able to, our faith, and it's so true, I can't pass my faith to my kids, can I?
No.
I can't, it's impossible. I can try. You can try to beat it into them. We've tried. Doesn't work.
No, it won't do no good.
It don't do no good. But the way that it works is that as they see me, they see Felicia live in her faith, then that's an example for them to help them grow. So as we mature in our faith, we help those under us to mature in theirs as well. All right. Let's,
Jason,
yes, ma'am.
have you ever heard a cow sing?
A cow sing. Well, I don't know that I have one.
I heard one last night on TV singing.
That's awesome, Linda May.
Oh,
That's awesome. So, as we get into this story of Joshua, I know I've used a lot of time, but we're going to see this man that follows Moses. And in our verses this morning, in our lesson this morning, Moses has died. And I'm just going to give a real brief history, just to tie it all together. Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt. He brought them through the desert. And in the process, God said, okay, Moses, you take the Israelites to the promised land, to this land of Canaan, this land that I'm going to give you. Moses says, okay, Lord, and he gathers together 12 spies to go into this new land to check it out. These 12 spies get back, and 10 of the 12 says they ain't no way. They said, we can't do it. The people there are big, they're strong, they've been warriors their whole lives, and there's no way we can go into this land and conquer. 2 of the 12 said, let's go. And those 2 of the 12 were, one was Caleb and the other was Joshua. And so because the Israelites did not obey God and go and take this land, God said, okay, of these 10 people that came back, none of your generation, will not enter into the promised land. But to Caleb and Joshua, you and your generation will. And so now, that included Moses. Okay? So Moses has passed away. All these generations have passed away. And now God tells Moses, as we're going to see, or tells Joshua, it's your turn. And so that's where we find ourselves in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. And let's just go ahead and read our verses. And it says, now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, into the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea forward, the going down of the sun shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. So, if we read the verses, what does God command Joshua to do?
To take them across the Jordan River.
Take him across the Jordan. To go claim my promise. Okay, hear what I said? God tells Joshua to go claim my promise. This is very important. Go claim my promise. Go claim my promise. How many of us want to go claim God's promise for us in our lives? That sounds like a really good idea, doesn't it? I want to go claim my promise. He still does that to us. In all aspects of our life, God is telling us, go claim it. Go claim my promise. What is it that God promises us?
That He'll never leave us or forsake us.
He'll never leave us or forsake us. He'll be there for us. He loves us. You know, it boils down, the greatest promise that God gives us is love. The greatest promise He gives us is that He so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him shall not perish. That's His promise, is that He loves me. Do we all get that every single minute of every single day? That the greatest promise, what I have given to me, is I'm loved by the Creator God. So, when I'm getting ready to get on that airplane,
We don't remember it every
we
single
don't
minute of every
remember
day.
it. Do we? What a great statement. See, we fail to
We should.
remember it.
We should.
Absolutely. But the promise is there, April, every second, every heartbeat, every minute. God is saying, I love you. I love you this much. I love you this much. I love you this much. I love you. And He's asking us to go claim His promise. What a beautiful thing. What an awesome thing to go claim His promise in every breath. That God loves me. Now, doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean no problems. Doesn't mean everything's going to work out. But what it means is if I go claim that promise every day and live my life like I know that the Creator of this universe, that God loves me, how does that change our lives? Stanley, how does it change it?
Feel secure.
Secure. The trust is, we can trust. Can I trust God with my finances?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Can I trust Him in my relationships?
Yes.
Can I trust Him in every single aspect? And why can I trust Him? Because He's told me to go claim His promise. And His promise is that I love you. I love you so much that I give my Son for you. That's how special you are. That's how special each breath that comes out of my mouth is. That's kind of pretty dang amazing when you think about it. And so that's the promise. God is telling Joshua in these first groups of verses, He says, Joshua, Moses is dead. I promised you that you would see the promised land because you were faithful. Out of the 12, you and Caleb were faithful. Now go claim that promise. And so that's what we ultimately see in verses 1 through 5. Now as we go to our next group of verses, just incredible. Joshua chapter 1 verses 6 through 9. After God tells Joshua to go claim the land, then He says in verse 6, He says, Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swear to their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written within. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. What's the takeaway out of verses 6 through 9? What do y'all think? I mean, what sticks out to y'all?
Tell them to be strong and not be afraid.
Be strong and courageous. That's what sticks out to me. Be strong and courageous. Is trust easy?
Yeah.
What do you have to do to trust? You have to be strong and courageous. How many of you have ever seen the trust fall? Has anybody ever seen it? Have anybody? Some of us have done the trust fall. The boys showed me this video we was driving Thursday. They showed me this video. It's this guy, and it's at a church youth group, and they've got this guy on a table, and they're all going to do the trust fall and cross your arms and fall, and he falls the wrong way. There ain't nobody behind. I mean, he falls off this table just. How many of us ever felt like that's our trust fall? I mean, I felt like that before, you know. I mean, I got to be. It was terrible. Okay, I mean, you weren't supposed to laugh, but it was. I couldn't help it. I mean, he's up there, and they said, "All right, just fall," and they're all behind him, and he just falls. And the preacher's going, "No," they're trying to grab him. But he just falls just stiff as a board, just right the wrong way. Sometimes that feels like our trust fall. But the fun, the beautiful, why that's such a great experience when you don't fall the wrong way, is that you truly are. You're blindfolded, you put your arms across your chest, you stand still aboard, you're up on this inclined position, and you fall, and then just to have arms wrapped around you and catch you is a pretty cool feeling.
Trusting in man.
You say what?
Trusting in man.
You're trusting in man. Yes, it is. But it is a lesson in, it's a physical lesson in trust, because we've kind of already talked about faith is hard because why? We can't see. And I think it is a neat little representation, is when you're blindfolded and you can't see and you think you're up on a pedestal and you fall and there's arms that wrap you up. I think it is a neat little illustration of faith. I can't see it, but it catches me.
Just like his, did he get up, Jason?
I don't know, that it cuts off after that. Probably not a good sign. The video ended.
Like you say, you fall, if the ladder hits not too level, you fall off and hit too.
You sure can, Linda. So if we get back to our verses and we talk about being strong and of good courage, we have to be strong and courageous to trust. We have to. Trust doesn't happen. We think about in our relationships, whether it be a coworker, whether it be a child, whether it be a spouse. Trust takes courage and strength. It absolutely does. Trust takes courage and strength. It's easy for me to sit here and teach to y'all and us to be right here together in this church building, and boy, we can be strong and courageous. But then when we leave here, sometimes it gets a lot harder than that.
He tells in verse 8 how to do that.
Oh, exactly right. No, you're exactly right. It does tell us how to do it. It's by staying in the Word and reading, and that's a key part of it. But one other thing that struck me out of this verse, or out of these verses, if we look in verse 6, it says, "Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I shared unto their fathers to give them." So if we look at verse 6, God tells Joshua that he needs to be strong and of good courage to go and to make this journey. Okay? It's going to take strength and courage to go and make this journey. To go and actually put your feet on this ground and do what it takes to, whether it be battles, whether it be the Jerichos in our life, whatever it is, it's going to take strength and courage to do it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Jason, a lot of times strong courage will be being afraid to do it anyway and knowing
Oh,
Yeah.
that
that's a big-
faith has got to step in.
Absolutely. You know, I think the point I want to bring out, and I mean, you're exactly right. It's having the faith when we're scared to do it anyway. I mean, that's a big part of trust. That's a big part of faith, that we have to be strong and courageous to do that. But then, see, there's a difference in verse 7. What does verse 7 say? Can you tell the difference between verse 6 and 7?
Telling him to observe, to watch.
It is that there's a little teeny word difference between verse 6 and 7 when it talks about being strong and courageous. Did anybody catch it?
It says, only be thou strong and courageous.
All right. Daniel said, only be thou strong. But he also, Lonnie hit the point. Does anybody see the word very?
Very courageous is what I started saying.
Now, this is what it says to me. I'm not saying I'm right, but this is what it says to me. To go and do, I have to be what? Strong and courageous. But then verse 7 talks about something else. Verse 7 talks about, if we go on to read it, it says, only thou be strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law, which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. You know what that tells me? To go and do requires me to be strong and courageous. But for me to obey wholeheartedly and follow God's commands, I have to be what? Not only strong, but
Obedient.
very courageous. Do y'all get that?
In other words, you're going to see something that you don't think you can do.
Absolutely, Mark. That's absolutely right. Do you realize obedience isn't easy, is it? Obedience isn't, it's never been easy. Obedience is hard. Why? Anybody got any ideas?
It's risky.
It's risky. That's exactly this one for sure.
It's not doing it our way. We're
And it's
doing
not
it
doing
God's
it
way.
our way, I think is absolutely another. Think about it, Marty, what you and Carlotta both said is so, and how does that tie together? Obedience is risky and it's not doing our way. Once we're not doing it our way, who's in control?
God.
Not us, right? And not us not being in control is what?
God.
Risky. That's how we feel. Does that make sense? When we feel like we're not in control, then we feel like it's a risk. Just like that trust fall. What makes a trust, when you go the right way, what makes a trust fall is that you're going against everything in your mind. Okay, I'm going to fall off a high elevation with my arms across my chest and fall backwards and blindfolded and can't see. And that's just because this fella told me to?
That question would be,
I mean, that seemed like a risk.
the question would be, do I trust the ones to catch me?
That's right.
And we need to know that we can trust God to catch us every single time.
And that's a great point, Carla. You know, I think when me and Marty both done it, I assume Marty had the same experience I did. You know, you didn't even know there was anybody around. You were just told to cross your arms. It wasn't like in a church group and they said, oh, we're all behind you. It was just that you're up on this high elevation and just fall because somebody told you to. I kind of get what we're talking about. I get this risk. I get this. And so, but the thing about verse 7 is that we have to be strong and courageous to go, that we have to be strong and very courageous to obey.
It recognizes that there's gonna be resistance, and our first reaction is to turn left, right, but you don't do that.
Absolutely, Lonnie. Absolutely. But there's one way, and that's the way that you must follow. And I think that's a great
Oh,
point.
Joyce, anybody told me to fall back, I wouldn't do it. And I wouldn't be blindfolded either.
I understand. So guys, I think what the points that came out to me as I was looking through verses 6 through 6 and 7 is, again, I'm just going to rehash it. The idea that to go and do, we have to be strong and courageous, but to obey, we have to be strong and very courageous. And especially when you go in to say what we are asked to obey, what Joshua was asked to obey. He was said that he must observe to do according to all the law, which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or the left hand, that thou mayest prosper whether thou go. And then it says, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night. Then thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make it thy way prosperous, and then shalt thou have good success. It goes on to say that when we obey, that's how we make our way prosperous. That's how we have good success. And then in verse 9, it says, have not I commanded thee, be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. Why? Why is God saying that you can do these things? At the end of verse 9.
The Lord thy God is with thee.
Is with thee. That's why. You know, I kind of started out by saying, and we started this whole conversation on this idea of it's easy, not easy. It makes it easy for us to go through hard situations when somebody's with us because they're there. We can feel it. But see, if you go to what verse 9 says, the reason that we can be strong and courageous, the reason that we can be not afraid, the reason that we can be not dismayed is for the Lord thy God is with thee whatsoever thou goest. And I think this is a good place to end because I want to just tie that back in together. This idea of as we trust, as we grow, because each situations that we follow, these examples, and God is there, and He is there, and He is there. You know, at some point, we can get to the point that we feel that God is with us because He's been trustworthy on all the other examples. And so that our faith gets stronger because we feel His presence more and more. Guys, is there any discussion before we close this morning?
Jason, you were talking about God's love. It came to me this past week in Bible study that God's love is the purest form of love ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So guys, I think this was, to me, it's a special lesson. The idea of faith and trust and the example of Joshua, I think is pretty cool. Be strong and very courageous. That's what we were commanded. That's what we're asked to do. So, I love you guys. I won't be here the next 2 weeks. I'll be here the last Sunday of the month, and I think Lonnie's got us an all-star cast. Going to teach for us the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited about that. And I love you. Have a great week.
You have a great week.
Jason, I want to ask you a question.
We're gonna have him anyway.